Mark Zuckerberg's election season gift to Republicans. What universe are we in? Mark Zuckerberg is handing Republican politicians victories ahead of the 2024 presidential election. So, remember, he was the CEO of Meta and Facebook and Instagram and all that. And he was like really well known for being on the left side of things as a Democrat. So this is very shocking to many people. In recent days, the Meta chief executive has made newsworthy public statements implicatingly supporting right-wing censorship narratives and offered praise to Donald Trump as badass, even as he claimed he wanted to appear neutral and nonpartisan. On Monday, Zuckerberg sent a letter to the powerful House Judiciary Committee stating that Biden administration had pressured Meta to censor content during the pandemic. In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire. They're still doing it. And expressed a lot of frustration with our teams, and we didn't agree, Zuckerberg said. The Meta chief added that the pressure he felt was wrong, and he came to regret that his company, the parent of Facebook and Instagram, was not more outspoken. The letter was immediately weaponized by Trump, who used it to once again promote the lie that the 2020 election was stolen. Now, depending on what you believe, what side you're on, this article was written by CNN Business. Zuckerberg admits that the White House pushed the suppress Hunter Biden laptop story and much more. In other words, the 2020 presidential election was rigged, he wrote in his Truth Social platform on Tuesday morning after Zuckerberg's letter became public. The Republican-led House Judiciary Committee also welcomed Zuckerberg's letter, posting a copy Monday on social media and using it to attack President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now running as the Democratic nominee for president. The letter was sent amid a 2-year investigation by House Republicans into the content moderation policies of major social media networks. Zuckerberg just admitted 3 things. 1, Biden-Harris administration pressured Facebook to censor Americans. 2, Facebook censored Americans. 3, Facebook throttled the Hunter Biden laptop story. Big win for free speech, the committee wrote on X. It's not uncommon for social media companies to reevaluate their approach to content moderation in the run-up to elections, and some experts now believe the companies may have overdone it at times in the 2020 cycle. But the decision to make such a disclosure in a letter to the House Judiciary Committee is noble. The committee is chaired by Ohio Rep. Jim Jordan, who has repeatedly pushed false rhetoric that 2020 election was stolen and celebrated the dismantling of the academic institutions dedicated to researching election misinformation. Zuckerberg's decision to describe the White House's attempt to flag COVID misinformation as pressure and censorship came despite a 6-3 decision this summer by the Supreme Court ruling that the federal government has not overstepped by asking platforms to take down potential misinformation. But Zuckerberg's letter publicly played into the hands of Republicans, who have long falsely claimed that social media platforms colluded with liberal government officials to censor conservative voices. There has been instances, as Zuckerberg has acknowledged, where platforms took down or reduce the spread of dangerous pandemic misinformation or blatant lies about elections, like incorrect locations of polling places, though that occurred under the Trump and Biden administrations. In recent years, the platforms run by Zuckerberg and billionaire Trump supporter Elon Musk have eliminated many of the guardrails designed to reduce the spread of viral misinformation, including allowing Trump to return after he was banned in the wake of the January 6th attack. Zuckerberg, who previously donated more than $400 million to enhance access to voting in the U.S., told Jordan that he would no longer support election efforts after coming under attack from Republicans who have argued that the funds, diversely referred to as Zuckerbucks, helped Biden win key battleground states. I know that some people believe this work benefited one party over the other, he wrote. My goal is to be neutral and not play a role one way or another, or even appear to be playing a role. So I don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle. As the COVID-19 pandemic depleted local resources during the 2020 election, private companies like Facebook stepped in to fill the coffers of election offices with these grants. With the explosion of mail-in voting during the pandemic, which requires more resources than in-person voting, counties across the country gladly welcomed the cash. But after Trump lost several key states and counties that took the money, Republicans used it as a scapegoat. The decision to cut the funding was hailed as a victory by Republicans, with the Judiciary Committee celebrating the move. The Meta chief also went a step further, telling the committee that the company's decision to briefly limit sharing of New York Post's infamous October 2020 story on Hunter Biden laptop was a mistake, a decision he was previously expressed regret over. Zuckerberg said that it has been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation, and in retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. I do agree too. But while the contents of the laptop that the Post reported on turned out to be authentic, according to Justice Department, the New York Post reporting in 2020 peddling a false narrative that was being simultaneously pushed by the Russian government. That false narrative claimed Joe Biden had pressured government officials in Ukraine into firing a prosecutor who was investigating the Ukrainian gas company Burisma, where his son was on the board. Zuckerberg's letter comes just weeks after he told Bloomberg that Trump's reaction to an assassination attempt was badass, even after the former president threatened to send the Meta chief to prison if reelected. Seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life, he told Bloomberg. I agree. Taken together, the remarks show Zuckerberg offering Republicans an olive branch ahead of the election and some political ammunition to wit. In the Bloomberg interview, Zuckerberg said Meta had enacted changes to its platforms to reduce the amount of political content reaching users, though it remains unclear what meets that definition. I think you're going to see our services play less of a role in this election than they have in the past, he said. Yeah, nothing should be censored when it comes to the presidential election and candidates. I mean, we need to know everything that we can to make our choices, good and bad. It is funny, though, to see how CNN writes about it, and we can compare it to another article from another source. Now, I'm going to show you an article from Vox.com. Okay. This is not a win for free speech. It's a political grenade. Okay, that's quite the start. The bang. This week, Mark Zuckerberg sent Rep. Jim Jordan a letter outlining how the Biden administration pressured his company to censor free speech on Facebook, specifically misinformation about COVID-19. The letter also made reference to Hunter Biden's laptop and Zuckerberg's lack of plans to spend money on the election. This sounds bad, but none of this information is new. Okay. It's interesting that Zuckerberg decided to dive into the free speech snake pit this week. It's also not surprising that Republicans who have been on a book banning spree at schools nationwide are propping up old facts as if they were new revelations in their ongoing quest to blame Democrats for censorship. It's election season, and questioning reality is part of the fun. Man, right off the bat, you could tell the narrative is left right away. As we enter the final 2 months before election, there are fewer guardrails for misinformation in place on major social media platforms, and writing a letter about Biden administration censorship, Zuckerberg seems to be throwing Republicans a political grenade, something that can fire up the base and use to get mad about Democrats. In reality, though, Zuckerberg is probably just trying to keep his company out of more hot water and to continue revamping his own public image. To understand how Zuckerberg's letter could do this, it helps to know why he sent it to the Rep. Jordan in the first place. Jordan, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, has singled out the Meta CEO in an ongoing investigation that alleges that Biden administration and tech companies colluded to censor free speech online. They did. And, Jordan even threatened to hold Zuckerberg in contempt of Congress for ignoring a subpoena for documents. Zuckerberg now seems rather forthcoming. In his letter, Zuckerberg acknowledges that Biden administration pressured the company to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, which we went over before in the other article, and says that pressure was wrong. Zuckerberg added that his company was ready to push back if something like this happens again. This is not news. The Biden administration did pressure Meta as well as its competitors to crack down on COVID-19 misinformation throughout the pandemic. They didn't admit that before. So I like how they're sneaking that in there. In 2021, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy called it an urgent threat, and Biden himself said that misinformation was killing people, a statement he later walked back. This pressure was also set at the center of the recent Supreme Court case in which justices ruled in the favor of Biden administration. We also knew that Meta, then known as simply Facebook, pushed back efforts to stop the spread of misinformation on its platforms not long after Biden's unaliving people remark. Leaked company documents revealing that Facebook knew that the vaccine misinformation on its platforms were undermining its own goal of protecting the jab rollout and was causing harm. It even studied the broader problem and produced several internal reports on the spread of misinformation, but despite pressure from Congress, Facebook failed to share that research with lawmakers at that time. We actually learned about that specific kind of pressure the White House put on Facebook a year ago, thanks to documents the company overturned to, you guessed it, Jim Jordan and the House Judiciary Committee. The Biden administration issued a statement after Zuckerberg's latest letter became public. It said, in part, our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors, should take into account the effects of their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present. People are entitled to have their opinions, and social media, when you write a post, it's usually your opinion on something you're sharing that's personal, your thoughts. So, yeah. But the Zuckerberg letter didn't stop with details of well-known crackdown on COVID misinformation. It also reminds the public of the time the Biden administration asked social media companies to slow the spread of the New York Post article about Hunter Biden's laptop ahead of the 2020 election. Without mentioning any direct pressure from the government, Zuckerberg says in the letter that his company demoted the laptop story while it conducted a fact check. He told podcaster Joe Rogan something similar in a 2022 interview when he mentioned that an FBI misinformation warning contributed to the decision to suppress the story. Twitter also suppressed the laptop story, and its executives denied that there was pressure from Democrats or law enforcement to do so. Zuckerberg also addresses some donations he made to the voting access efforts through his family's philanthropic foundation. My goal is to be neutral and not play a role one way or another, or to even appear playing a role, the billionaire said. So I don't plan on making similar contributions this cycle. The House Judiciary Committee responded in a tweet. Mark Zuckerberg also told the Judiciary Committee that he won't spend the money on this election cycle. That's right, no more Zuckerbucks. Neither party mentioned that Zuckerberg also declined to make a contribution to the 2022 cycle for the same reasons. The right is taking a victory lap over this Zuckerberg letter. Others are simply wondering why on earth, on an otherwise quiet week in August, did Zuckerberg even bother to remind us all of these similar facts? Because he wants the truth out there. And regardless what side you're on, yes, the Republicans, the right side, had said that this was going on, and that's exactly what they did. And now the truth is coming out. So of course they're doing a victory lap because they're vindicated. I mean, honestly, that's why big impact and his words are taken seriously. Kind of validated what they've been saying. Sorry, not sorry. One theory comes from Peter Krafka at Business Insider. Zuckerberg very carefully gave Jordan just enough to claim a political victory, but without getting Meta in any further trouble while it defends itself against a federal antitrust suit. I mean, yeah, he could be covering his ass too. To be clear, Congress is not behind the antitrust lawsuit. The case, which dates back to 2021, comes from the FTC, Federal Trading Commission, and 40 states, which say that Facebook illegally crushed competition when it acquired Instagram and WhatsApp. Yeah, but it must be top of the mind for Zuckerberg. In a landmark antitrust case less than a month ago, a federal judge ruled against Google and called it a monopoly. So antitrust is almost certainly on Zuckerberg's mind. It's also possible Zuckerberg was just sick of litigating events that happened years ago and wanted to close the loop on something that has caused his company massive levels of grief. Plus, allegations of censorship have been a distraction from his latest big mission to build artificial general intelligence. Oh, yeah, that's right. Zuckerberg, according to his news cycle, is a newly minted member of Gen Z, one whose future focused on a patriotic way. For all we know, dashing off controversial seeming letters to Congress is part of this revamped image, and yet another way of reminding the world that he does not want to be involved in politics again. What do you guys think of him flopping and flipping around on sides? Tell me in the chat and the comments down below.